where to find the recording and where to find the slide deck on our website as well. So types of financial aid, really all different types of financial aid that you're wanting to go after can boil down into kind of two overarching groups. The first is gift aid, and it's gift aid. We call it that because it is just that. It's a gift. It's free money that you don't have to pay back. So in this gift aid category are scholarships and grants. Think of scholarships as money that is rewarding your student for achievements that they've been able to gain over their high school career. So these could be merit scholarships for academic achievement. They could be talent-based scholarships for extracurricular achievement, or they could be athletic aid, athletic scholarships for athletic achievement, or if they're wanting to continue on in their sport in college. So scholarships are likely going to come, the majority of money is going to come from institutions themselves. And likely the merit scholarships are going to be the biggest piece of that financial aid offer from institutions. And typically the application for those merit scholarships is the application for admission at those schools. For grants, that's where the need-based aid component comes in the form of grant aid. Again, you don't have to pay this money back. This is a free gift that you're getting to discount the amount that you're having to pay for institutions. And these could be need-based grants from institutions themselves, so the schools that your student is planning on attending or considering attending. They could be from the federal government in the form of a federal Pell Grant or the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, or they could be from your state if your student is planning on staying in state for college. So these have a variety of different funding sources where you could get some grant money, but typically this is going to be need-based. And so you'll have to demonstrate need based on income and assets that you are in need of that grant money. The other kind of pool of money is self-help aid. And we call this self-help aid because typically there's some strings attached or some additional things that you need to consider when you're taking out this self-help aid. So this is where loans and employment opportunities live kind of in the aid space. So loans, of course, would require repayment with interest on down the line. And so it's important to really be cognizant of what you're borrowing and only borrow what you feel like you absolutely need to be able to pay what's remaining at the institution. We'll talk through those specifics on different loan programs that your student could be eligible for or that you as a parent could be eligible for, but know that it is an option. And we'll kind of talk through some recommendations and how to kind of frame what that looks like long-term on down the line. Employment opportunities work a little bit differently than other types of aid. So scholarships, grants, and loans typically are all going to get added up together and come off of that balance at the institution that your student is attending in a lump sum. Employment opportunities will require your student to go out on campus, find a job, and actually work those hours to get paid out the federal work-study or institutional work-study funds over the course of the academic year. So when you're looking at a financial aid offer, it's important to kind of think about that as a separate pool of money and don't automatically put that towards what's owed because that's going to come kind of piecemeal throughout the semester or throughout the year as your student is working that job. To apply for these different types of aid, really there are a few big pieces, applications that you need to kind of have on your radar. So like I said, the admission application at the institutions that your student is looking at are going to be mainly also the scholarship application for those automatic merit scholarships. That is a good question to ask as you're kind of narrowing down your students list and as they're submitting applications. Ask the institutions, is your application for admission also the application for merit scholarships, or are there additional scholarship applications that we need to fill out or that we will be eligible for? The admission application is likely going to be the big one, but they might also have some competitive or talent-based scholarships that your student can apply for above and beyond that application for admission and those automatic merit scholarships. So that's definitely something to ask the schools that your student is looking at so that you are not leaving any stone unturned there. The free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA, is the big need-based aid application. And this is going to determine need-based aid at the federal, state, and institutional levels. For things, like I said earlier, the federal Pell Grant, the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, or that federal student loan. So just by filing the FAFSA, your student would be eligible for their direct loan eligibility. And that can be important to kind of drive down the cost of attendance up front and help with financing the cost. Typically, that federal student loan is going to be on the lower end of interest rates that you can find for educational loans. So that's kind of the first loan program that we recommend if you are looking at financing any portion of that remaining balance. The CSS profile is another need-based aid application that goes much more in depth into your family financial situation. It's required by some colleges and universities to file in addition to the FAFSA to get that more detailed financial information from you. A lot of times the CSS profile is being requested by highly selective institutions. So think of your Ivy League colleges. They are probably requesting you to fill out this CSS profile. It does involve a fee to file with each school that you would like that information sent to. So just make double sure that that school requires the CSS profile before submitting that application, because you certainly don't want to pay any money if you don't have to. The FAFSA is the big need-based aid application, though, and it's relatively easy to find. It's out there on federal student aid. That's studentaid.gov. And over the past couple of years, federal student aid has really worked to consolidate a lot of the information and resources onto studentaid.gov. So you might be familiar with FAFSA.gov, but the FAFSA form itself currently lives on studentaid.gov. So it's just one big site now where you can access financial aid resources. This is where students will go to kind of finish out the aid process. If they have accepted any of their federal direct loans, this is where they'll figure out who their servicer is and start repayment on those loans. They can get some additional resources on as they're starting the financial aid cycle and try and figure out information needed for the FAFSA form and kind of what to anticipate when you're filing the FAFSA. But the form itself also lives out there on studentaid.gov, and it's really easy to find. Just FAFSA form in the top menu and then complete the FAFSA form. If you go out there tonight, you'll see only the 24-25 FAFSA is open currently. So for any seniors that are looking to fill it out for the 25-26 academic year, it is not quite open just yet. We anticipate the 25-26 FAFSA opening likely around December 1 this year. The federal government has said it will be available on or before. And so we're kind of anticipating it's probably going to be closer to or on December 1 when that form becomes available for seniors to fill out. Most need-based aid is awarded on a first come, first served basis. But if you all have seen news stories and heard from friends who have maybe gone through the process last year, the FAFSA and federal student aid did kind of an overhaul to the application process last year for 24-25. And that caused some significant delays and glitches in the form for 24-25. They have committed that they are going to fix all of those glitches and test it thoroughly before they open 25-26, which is why we're seeing a little bit of a delay and a little bit of ambiguity on when that form exactly will open later this year. But because of the ambiguity and because it is a new platform that's still being tested, typically we say, apply as quickly as you can. And I'm gonna start the mantra this year of apply early within reason. So knowing that most need-based aid is awarded on a first come, first served basis, it would make sense to get in right away and fill out that FAFSA form to kind of get it off your plate and get it to the institutions as quickly as possible. But as I said, with those glitches, it might benefit you to wait a few days or a week Just make note of any priority deadlines, FAFSA priority deadlines or filing deadlines at the schools that your student is looking at, so that you know that you're at least meeting those priority deadlines. If you file the FAFSA before their deadline, they're essentially saying they're guaranteeing the same amount of aid. So if their FAFSA priority deadline is February 1, they're gonna guarantee the same amount of aid if you file on January 1 versus December 1. But you might encounter a much more smooth process if you wait a little bit to file, and let all those glitches and kind of the traffic die down from studentaid.gov when we know it's gonna be a rush right at the very beginning when that form opens. You will complete the FAFSA, that free application for federal student aid, every year that your student is enrolled in college and seeking federal, state, or institutional aid. So you'll need to continue this process for 4 years, or as long as the student is pursuing a degree and wants to be eligible for some aid. Some things to know about the FAFSA form. So the FAFSA is going to ask for tax and income information for both the parent and the student. And the 25-26 FAFSA will ask for your 2023 information. So if you think you're filing the form in December, the taxes that you just most recently filed would have been 2023. So all that prior year tax means is that it's just looking 2 years back into the past to pull from your most recent tax return. And so you'll be reporting that 2023 information on this upcoming year's FAFSA. Now, depending on personal circumstance, some students could be considered independent and not required to report parental information. Students would be independent if they could answer yes to a series of questions, like if they are in a legal guardianship, if their biological or adoptive parents are both deceased and they're in foster care or a ward of the court, if they're homeless or at risk of being homeless. Those all could constitute them as independent and not have to provide parental information on the FAFSA form. The vast majority of students coming straight out of high school are going to be considered dependent and have to include their parental information on their form. The Student Aid Index, or the SAI, is the result of filing the FAFSA. So the SAI will take the parent income and asset information and the student income and asset information and give you a student aid index that plots you literally on an index on a spectrum of anywhere from -1,500 all the way up to 999,999 that tells institutions your need-based aid eligibility. So this SAI is going to be used for the federal aid eligibility, your state aid, and institutions themselves will determine what need-based aid they can award based on that SAI. That student aid index is going to remain constant for that entire academic year at all of the schools that your student is applying to. So that student aid index will be the same when you share your FAFSA information with all of the schools that your student is applying to. Within the FAFSA form, there's something called the direct data exchange that allows you to provide consent to the IRS to share your tax information from 2023 with federal student aid. Once you consent, it will port in all of your tax information into the FAFSA, so you don't have to manually enter all of that information. That is highly recommended, and it is required if you would like your student to be eligible for financial aid. So it's possible to opt out of that consent and not allow the direct data exchange to transfer your information from the IRS. But if you do not provide consent, your student is not eligible for financial aid. Last year, they kind of made a change to how the flow of the form worked. And so they introduced contributor roles. And all this means is that there are separate sections of the FAFSA form that are going to be filled out by the students themselves and then by the parent or whoever their contributors are. If the student is married, their spouse would be a contributor on their FAFSA form. If they're an independent student, they would be the only contributor as the student. There would be no other contributors there. But like I said, the vast majority of students coming straight out of high school are going to be considered dependent and have to include parental information on the FAFSA form. So parents will be invited as contributors to fill out the parent portion of the student's FAFSA form. So what can we do right now to help prepare for the FAFSA, knowing that it's going to be a couple months before we can actually fill it out for 25-26? The biggest thing is making sure that your 2023 taxes are filed with the IRS. So those have to be on file with the IRS before you can file the FAFSA form. So that's a very important step. If you filed for an extension, make sure that those are filed and on file with the IRS prior to filling out the FAFSA form in December. You can also create FSA IDs. So FSA IDs is a federal student aid login, essentially, that will serve as your electronic signature on the FAFSA form. So the student will need a distinct FSA ID that's theirs. It's tied to your social security number. So parents, if you have older children who have already been in college and you've already done a FAFSA for them in past years, your FSA ID is going to be the same. Similarly, if parents, you have your own student loan debt that you're still, if you have federal student loans that you're still paying off, you likely have an FSA ID already. And so that's going to be yours for life. There is a way to recover your information. If you don't remember your login information, you can recover your username and then go through the forgot password and answer the security questions to unlock your account. But if you've never established an FSA ID before, you will need to do that to be able to fill out the FAFSA form and sign and submit. One thing you can also do is kind of have a conversation as a family and determine who the parent of record should be. So for families who students' parents are married, both are going to be included on the FAFSA form as contributors. But only one parent needs to get in and formally fill out that parent portion if you file taxes married filing jointly. If you're married, again, both parents are going to be on the FAFSA, but if you file married filing separately, both of you are going to need an FSA ID to be able to get in and contribute your information. If the student's parents, their biological or adoptive parents, are divorced or separated or have never been married, they're gonna need to determine who their parent of record is on the FAFSA. And so the parent of record for divorced, separated, or never married parents is going to be the parent that financially supported the student more over the last 12 months. So as a family, you're going to determine which parent provided more financial support for the student, and that's going to be the parent of record. If that parent that provided more than 50% of the financial support for the student is remarried, then their new spouse would also be included on that student's FAFSA form. Creating a school list can also be really helpful ahead of the FAFSA opening. The FAFSA can hold up to 20 schools at one time, and so your student can have up to 20 active institutions. Hopefully students aren't actually applying to 20 different institutions, but it's a possibility if they would like to, if they're really go-getters. So having that list of schools narrowed down when you're actually filing the FAFSA will prevent you from having to go in and make corrections to add or delete schools later on. You don't have to have applied to the institution. You don't have to have been admitted to the institution or have any connection to the institution in order to add them to your FAFSA form. So students should add as many schools up to 20 that they're even slightly interested in. And then, like I said, they don't have to worry about going and making a correction later on. Also, making note of priority deadlines for seniors. For senior parents, you're going to want to kind of map out what this year is going to look like and make sure that you have priority deadlines on your radar and on the calendar so that you can make sure that your student is hitting application, scholarship, and FAFSA deadlines throughout the year, so they're not missing out on any aid just because they didn't apply on time. This gives you a little bit more information about the contributor portion of the FAFSA. So if a student is dependent, the parent or the student can go in first and start the FAFSA form and invite the other party as the contributor to accept the invitation and fill out their portion. So students can start the form and invite their parents, but they will have to have the contributor, so the parent's name, date of birth, social security number, and email address in order to add them to the form. Because a lot of students don't have ready access to that information for their parents, we do recommend that the parents start the form because parents, you likely have access to the student's social security number and date of birth and email address. So the parent can start the form and invite the student to complete the student portion. This little box at the bottom of your screen also tells you the documents or information that you need to have with you as you're filing that FAFSA form. So it's a good idea to have your tax returns, so the 2023 tax return, in case there are any questions that pop up that you don't know off the top of your head and need to reference your actual taxes. Records of child support received. So if you're receiving any child support for your student, you'll have to report that as a parental asset. And so it's good to have that number kind of in your head going into the FAFSA form. You'll also need to know current balances of cash checking and savings accounts. So if you have the banking apps or access to your accounts online, you'll want to kind of have an idea of what's generally in those accounts as of the day that you're filing the FAFSA. And then you'll also need to report the net worth of investments. Those are things like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, money market accounts. Those are not 401ks. Also, if you have a 529 plan or a college savings plan for the student whose FAFSA you're filling out, that would be included as a parental asset if you're listed as the owner on those accounts. You'll also need to report net worth of businesses and farms on the FAFSA form as well. And there is help text throughout the form to help you kind of figure out how to either calculate the information or where exactly to find it on a tax return or income document. Once you've filed the FAFSA and your student has been admitted to different institutions, they will formulate a financial aid offer for you and send it out to you, most likely send it directly to your student. A lot of institutions have started doing purely digital offers. So most likely nothing will come in the mailbox home. And so it's important to encourage your students to check their emails readily and often so that they're not missing any key pieces of information and sharing with you the financial aid information, particularly because you're going to need to make that decision as a family. This financial aid offer is going to list out all of the costs associated with attending that institution, all of the aid that your student has been deemed eligible for, and then a remaining balance that you can kind of expect as an attendee of the institution per academic year. There is no standardized format for financial aid offers, and so the way that they are displaying the information and the information that they're displaying might be a little bit different from institution to institution. One of those things that might be a little bit different and to kind of watch out for as you're getting these financial aid offers back to make sure that you're kind of comparing apples to apples is really drilling down into what cost they're showing you. So some institutions might show you only direct cost. Direct costs are things like tuition, mandatory fees, room and board, or housing and meals if your student is living on campus. These are things that are going to be owed to the institution and paid on a bill directly to the school. there are other schools that are going to show you the full cost of attendance. So this cost of attendance is made up of direct costs that are billed through the institution, and also a series of estimates or indirect costs for things like books and supplies, personal expenses, transportation expenses, miscellaneous expenses that your student can expect generally while attending that institution. So this is an important distinction because if you get two offers from two different institutions, and one is only showing you direct costs and one is showing you the full cost of attendance, the one that's showing you the cost of attendance is going to look more expensive, but you really want to take into account those indirect costs at the school that is only showing you the direct costs as well. You want to ask some additional questions to that institution, like generally, what should we expect to pay for books and necessary supplies? Are there any other fees that are associated with attendance that aren't showing on this financial aid offer? How much can we expect for transportation costs or personal expenses for our student? And those transportation and personal expenses are going to be pretty personal to your student. The schools that are showing you the full cost of attendance, those indirect costs are formulated through survey data from their actual students and then research from higher ed institutions and cost of living estimates in the area that that institution is in. So they're going to give you a general idea, but they're not going to be exactly what you're going to pay. But it gives you a much more realistic idea of what that holistic cost of attendance looks like to attend that institution. Need does vary based on the cost at these different institutions. So this is an important slide just because I think a lot of us hear need-based aid and there's a little bit of bristling that happens probably. There's some assumptions that we make, I think, about hearing need-based aid. Maybe you're assuming that you make too much to qualify for any need-based aid, or you're looking at a financial aid offer and you're saying, what do you mean I don't have need? Of course I need aid to be able to pay this cost of attendance. And so this kind of gives some context to how institutions are calculating your students' need. So based on their cost of attendance, they're going to take their student aid index out of that cost at their institution. So if you look at this kind of bar graph here, thinking through, there are going to be institutions that are the most expensive. That's four-year private institutions in bar number one. Kind of middle of the road might be four-year public institutions with kind of a middle ground cost of attendance. And then the three being two-year community colleges. So cost is going to vary a lot based on the type of institution, whether it's in-state, out-of-state. But then that school is going to take their cost of attendance, subtract out that student aid index, which is the result of the FAFSA filing. And then your need is going to be the XYZ boxes at those different institutions. So as you can see, X is much higher. So need is much higher at a four-year private institution than it is Z in a two-year community college. So this could explain, if your student is looking at a variety of institutions, why you're qualifying for need-based aid at, say, a four-year private institution, and you're not qualifying for need-based aid at a four-year public institution. That's going to play into the different types of aid that your student is eligible for at those different institutions. And one of those pieces of aid that's dependent upon is the federal direct student loans. Now, if you'll remember me saying, just by filing the FAFSA, your student is eligible for their federal direct student loan. Freshmen by credits are eligible for $5,500 in a direct student loan. Based on need at different institutions, your student could be eligible for $3,500 of their $5,500 to be subsidized. So that subsidized loan will not be accruing interest while your student is in school. The remaining of their eligibility for that year, so the $2,000 remaining, would be an unsubsidized loan that could that would be accruing interest while your student is in school, but for both the subsidized and unsubsidized loans, repayment is deferred until after your student graduates. So they graduate, they're no longer fully enrolled, they have a 6-month grace period, and then their repayment would start up on those loans. Their eligibility does go up a little bit based on credits in school. So freshmen get the 5,500, sophomores get the 6,500, and then juniors and seniors get 7,500 respectively. Those are the dependent loan limits for students that have to include parental information on their FAFSA. There are also a separate eligibility ranges for students who are independent and don't have to include parental information on their FAFSA form. Students that are independent have higher lending limits because theoretically they don't have parents to be able to apply for a Parent Plus loan or co-sign on a private loan on their behalf. And so they have some more flexibility there with the direct loans to be able to take out in their name. Outside scholarships can be a great way to kind of drive down that cost of attendance as well. After you get the financial aid offer from the institutions, that's going to show any federal, state, or institutional aid that your student has been deemed eligible for, but they could still apply for outside or private scholarships. We call them outside scholarships because they come from outside institutions typically. So our general rule with outside scholarships is looking as local as possible first and making sure that you're maximizing eligibility there. If you just Google college scholarships and go to those nationwide outside scholarship or private scholarship searches, thousands of college-going students are going to be applying to each of those scholarships each year. And so if you start at, say, like a local Rotary Club or Lions Club or PTA or something like that, where they might have some small scholarship opportunities, there are going to be fewer applicants. And so you're increasing your possibility of actually getting some aid. College savings plan. So if you have a 529 or a college savings plan that you have been saving up a little bit to pay for college costs, general rule here is to just go to the 529 or college savings plan provider early, kind of figure out what that authorization process looks like so that you know once you get that bill from the institution that your student is planning on attending, how to contact the plan and authorize that funding to go from the provider to the institution that your student is attending. One note about college savings plans or 529 plans, I mentioned this kind of in passing, but if you have a 529 plan for your student and you as the parent are listed as the owner, that does get reported as a parental asset in the investment net worth question on the FAFSA. If it's in grandma, grandpa's name, that's best case scenario because then it doesn't go on the FAFSA form. And as you're reporting that 529 or college savings value, you would only report the value of the student's FAFSA who you're filling out. So if you have multiple students with multiple 529 plans, you're only reporting the value of the student's plan who you're filing the FAFSA for. So you're not having to do the value of all of their siblings' plans as well. These are some private scholarship search engines to kind of start with. I would start at the bottom of the list and work your way up because like I said, the FastWebs, the College Boards of the world, those are going to be those nationwide private scholarship searches that lots of different students are applying to, especially for Missouri students. My Scholarship Central is a great resource. You fill out kind of a standard application and then it matches you to scholarship opportunities that you might be eligible for within Missouri. And so that can be a great option for students in state wanting some additional resources to help fund their cost of education. Financial aid offers are going to basically show you this basic calculation, right? So all of the costs associated with attending their institution, subtract all of the aid that your student has been deemed eligible for. So merit scholarships, their need-based grants, federal aid, state aid, that federal direct student loan, any private scholarships or outside money that they're bringing in, and then you get your remaining balance of what's owed to the institution. Once you have that remaining balance, there's really 3 ways to pay. The first is out of pocket. So if you're looking at that remaining balance and saying, okay, we might be able to do this, a payment from the 529 or college savings plan, and then maybe we're gonna pay out of pocket on a payment plan. That's something that is important to ask the institutions as you're kind of getting in the final steps of enrollment. Is you're looking at that remaining balance, you're saying this might be doable if we could do it over, a 10-month payment plan or a 12-month payment plan. So talking to the schools, seeing what the options are, understanding if there's any fees associated with the payment plans, if there's any interest that's going to accrue as you're paying off the remaining balance over the course of the academic year or the calendar year. If there's any benefits for paying in a lump sum at the beginning of the semester. All of those questions are good to ask the institution, like I said, as you're getting into those final steps of enrollment. If you're looking at that remaining balance on the financial aid offer and it is not going to be feasible to pay out of pocket in a lump sum or on a payment plan, there's really 2 options to be able to explore. Either a Parent Plus loan, that would be a federal loan in the parent's name. It is credit qualifying, so it does require an additional application to apply for that Parent Plus loan. The interest rate for that loan is 9.08% for the 24-25 school year. It is a fixed interest rate over the course of the life of that loan. And so can be a good option to kind of pay upfront and then have that loan repayment spread out over a longer period of time. The other option would be a private student or private parent loan. And so this would be going to private lenders like College Avenue or Sallie Mae and taking out private educational loans, either in the student's name, likely with the parents as co-signers, or in the parent's name themselves. These are also credit qualifying loans. And so you're going to have to go directly to the lender and apply and see what kind of interest rate you could get qualified for, what type of repayment options they're showing you, and kind of shop around and figure out what's the best option for you. This kind of gives you a little bit more of compare and contrast between the Parent Plus loan and private or alternative loan. One of the biggest differences probably is the repayment for both. So the Parent Plus loan, it is a federally held loan. There are forbearance and deferment options for repayment. Typically, it would go into repayment 60 days after full disbursement. So if your student's institution bills based on semester, you apply for a Parent Plus loan for the academic year. Half of that Parent Plus loan is going to pay to the institution in August to cover the fall expenses. Half of that Parent Plus loan, the remaining of the Parent Plus loan, is going to pay in January to cover spring expenses. And so repayment would go into effect about March after that loan is paid in full in January. Like I said, there are options for forbearance or deferment of the payments, but the Parent Plus loan does not have a subsidized option. So it is going to be accruing interest from the first disbursement. So it is recommended that you start payment on those right away, even if they are interest-only payments. The private or alternative loans are going to vary wildly based on lender and strength of your credit application. So that's something that's going to be important to watch for as you're kind of comparing and contrasting these different options and trying to figure out what might be the best option moving forward. Of course, we say, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, always borrow as conservatively as possible and only borrow what you feel like you absolutely need to be able to cover the costs of the institutions that you cannot pay out of pocket. This kind of gives you an idea of what those loan repayment estimates, those monthly payments would look like for the different loan programs. So for the federal direct student loan at 6.5% over the course of the standard 10-year repayment term, your student would be looking at about $113 a month per $10,000 that they're borrowing upfront. For the federal Parent Plus loan at 9.08%, again, over a standard 10-year repayment term, it's about 127 per $10,000 borrowed. And then private student loans, we estimate about a 10% interest rate, but I will tell you this year, we've been seeing approved interest rates at 13 and 16%. So this 10% is probably a very conservative estimate for interest rates currently. Again, over a standard 10-year repayment term, $132 per month per $10,000 borrowed. So looking at these monthly payments, it might seem pretty doable with your family or monthly budget. But if you're looking at a remaining balance on a financial aid offer of $10,000, times that by 4, because your student is going to be in their degree plan, most likely if they're earning a bachelor's degree for 4 years, and then times that monthly payment by 4 and see how feasible that is in your family budget. And if that's doable, then great. If not, then maybe we need to look at some alternative options of trying to figure out, is there a more affordable option, a more affordable school to be able to attend and not go into so much debt that you're going to be in a tough spot once all of those loans go into repayment. The timeline for senior year. So right now, seniors are probably in the thick of getting all of their information together for their admission applications. Hopefully you have gone on some campuses with your students to kind of really feel and immerse yourself in the campus culture and understand, what interact with current students and staff and faculty, understand, what the mission of the institution is and how your student feels on that campus. That can be really important and a vital piece of the college search process. This month, we are recommending families, senior families, create your FSA IDs. So again, parents, you will need one, and students will need one as well. December, we're looking at December 1, most likely is going to be that launch date of the 25-26 FAFSA. So again, for seniors, in December, filing the FAFSA form, again, file early within reason, give it a little bit of time to get the glitches out, but meet those priority deadlines. And then about March or April, you should start to receive financial aid offers from institutions that you've been admitted to. So getting that information, digesting all of that information, figuring out where is going to be the best social and academic and financial fit for your family and for your student, and then making your decision by that college decision deadline, that May 1, submitting the enrollment deposits, accepting or finalizing any financial aid. And then the summer is going to be so fun, of doing, all of the fun and exciting things of going to college, like enrolling for the first semester of classes and maybe going to some summer orientations, and your student's going to be meeting their roommate and picking out bedspreads. But it's also the time where you're really going to need to put the wheels in motion for your financial plan. You're most likely going to get that first bill from the institution in July with a first payment due date of most likely August. So kind of anticipate probably making a first payment before your student even moves into campus or starts classes. That's likely going to be the timeline. So taking that time to apply for a Parent Plus loan, apply for a private or alternative loan, making sure that you have all of those pieces in place so that when move in and first day of classes comes, you can kind of rest easy knowing that you have a financial plan in place for the semester. Okay, thrown a lot of information at you all. I'm going to open up the Q&A and see what questions we have. If there's any questions that got answered that we think might be beneficial to tell the group. Yeah, so parent of record questions again. So I'll just kind of go over that because that does get a little confusing. So for parent of record for the FAFSA, when the parents are divorced, separated, or never married, the family is going to determine who provided more financial support for the student over the last 12 months. And that's going to be the parent of record on the student's FAFSA form. If that parent has remarried, that student's step parent would go on the FAFSA form as well with their parent of record. $529 plans. So 529 college savings plans. Again, the student would be listed as the beneficiary, but the investment is going to be listed under the owner or custodian's name. So most likely, even if the student is the beneficiary, you all are listed as the owners of the account. And so that would be listed as a parental asset in the parent section of the FAFSA. Okay. So question, do you receive more money if you have two children in college? So under the student aid index formula, it does take into account the number in the family size. So you're going to report the number of dependents that you have in the family. So indirectly, it is counting those students that are still listed as dependents for FAFSA purposes. There is no explicit benefit for families that have two concurrently enrolled in college under the SAI formula. So it does ask you to report that information on the FAFSA. It will ask how many dependent students are going to be enrolled in college for the 25-26 academic year, but there's no explicit benefit or anything written into the formula that gives you a certain leg up there. Not all schools have the same deadline for the FAFSA application to be submitted. That is correct. So schools are going to determine their own priority filing deadlines, application, scholarship, and FAFSA deadlines. So you'll just want to check with the institution. If they don't have it widely published, that might mean that they don't have a priority deadline, especially because things were so delayed last year. A lot of schools waived their priority deadlines for 24-25. I would imagine that we would see maybe pushing back of FAFSA deadlines this year, but not completely waiving them again. But that's something that you'll want to check with the institutions that your student is looking at, definitely. So investment net worth is not going to include any specific retirement accounts. So yeah, IRAs, 401ks, those sorts of things would not be included as a parental investment. Only things like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, like I mentioned earlier. Okay. So when considering the parent of record, is it favorable for aid eligibility to list the parent with less income and assets, assuming divorced parents are contributing equally? So if the divorced parents truly are contributing 50-50, equal financial support, exactly 50-50, then the FAFSA rules say that the parent who earns the bigger income, the more income would be the parent of record on the FAFSA form. It is more favorable for aid eligibility purposes to list the parent with less income and assets, but that's how the FAFSA words it. So I would say, yeah, use your best judgment. That is not a verifiable piece of information that the federal government or institutions themselves can ask you to provide documentation showing that you provided the correct information for the correct parent of record. So it really is a determination on the family to determine who is providing more financial support and what would be in the best interest of the student. Yeah, I saw a question about the private scholarships or the outside scholarships that we put up. As a reminder, the session is being recorded, so you'll have access to the recording, and the slide deck will also be available on our website after we have the recording available and posted there. So you will be able to access the slides to refer back to any pieces of information that you didn't quite catch tonight. Okay, so another question, bank account records to prove what's in the bank accounts change monthly. So yeah, for the asset question, you'll have to report the current balances of cash, checking, and savings. As a general rule, you'll just kind of want to report what's generally in those accounts. It says the actual verbiage on the FAFSA is as of today, what's the current value of cash, checking, and savings? So to the letter of the regulation, you would have to report what's in those accounts the day that you're filing the FAFSA. If it makes you feel better to file the FAFSA on, say the 31st, if you get paid on the 1st of the month, do that so that you can answer the question honestly. But you can also use your best judgment and kind of report what's generally in those accounts on average. It doesn't have to be necessarily to the penny. Okay. I think we've answered majority of the ones that have come through. Perfect. So I don't see any more questions coming into the Q&A, so I'm going to share our contact information. As I mentioned, I know that there can be some really personal or specific questions when it comes to financial aid and filling out the FAFSA form. So please don't hesitate to reach out if there are additional questions that you think of, or if you have a personal question that you would like us to kind of help navigate you through. You can find our general email on this slide, as well as our general phone line. And I am the one that has been sending you, my email is tied to the Zoom meeting, so you're more than welcome to email me directly. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have there in my personal inbox as well. So thank you all so much again for joining us tonight and talking all things financial aid. We wish you the best of luck in your students' college search and financial aid process, and please don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything that we can help out with moving forward. Thank you all. Happy Thursday.